You may not need this podcast, but I promise you're in the right place. I'm your host, Ben McDougal, with my AI companion and co-host, BenBot. Each week, we're live in the Pour Over Publishing studio to chat with remarkable students, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and community builders. Together, we have fun exploring the frontiers of entrepreneurship and technology in Iowa and beyond. If you're a curious leader thirsty enough to make a ruckus, welcome to a friendly jolt brewed to keep you building. Enjoy! I might suggest that you refill your mug. We have a very special guest joining us. Brad Dwyer is in the house from RoboFlow, and we are about to get nerdy. Let's chat. Brad, good morning and welcome.
Hey, Ben. Thanks for having me.
So we've been friends a long time, and you've always caught my attention with the willingness not only to explore new ideas, but to build them into reality. I think back to the hatchling days, but also when computer vision was like new. Let's take a minute, rewind, a short introduction for yourself, and kind of catch our listeners up with, how Brad spends his days.
Yeah, nowadays I spend most of my days company building. I'm running a company called RoboFlow that now we have 30 team members and are scaling really rapidly and serving a lot of the world's biggest companies, providing computer vision as a service and a software tool for them to be able to interpret any source of visual data and make use of that previously unusable information to solve useful things in their business.
Knowing that the word computer vision is going to be used a lot throughout this episode, I'm wondering if you might be able to translate that for our listeners.
Yeah, so computer vision is really about taking images and turning them into information. So when your camera on your phone captures a picture, it's recorded as pixels. And until recently, that was not very useful information. Humans could understand what those pictures were about, but computers really couldn't do anything with that. And so computer vision is using largely machine learning these days to extract structured information from those pixels. So you might be able to point a camera at a car that's being built and have it identify when there's scratches or dents or plugs that are unplugged, and then sound an alarm so that you can better do quality assurance on your manufacturing line. Or you might be able to hook it up to a security camera and have it tell you if there's something dangerous going on in your facility, or basically any other place where you have a camera. You can pretend like you have a human monitoring that camera 24/7 and provide alerts or do automated actions or anything else that you can kind of imagine.
You mentioned machine learning. Would you mind translating that as well?
Sure. Machine learning, I think some people are calling it software 2.0. And that's in contrast to in the, olden days now. You would write a software program by defining the exact steps that a computer should go through to solve a problem. So in the case of computer vision, that would mean, I'm trying to detect a cat. What is a cat? Well, a cat has ears. What are ears? Well, they're these like triangular shaped things that are kind of fuzzy. Well, what is fuzzy? Well, it's like when the textures are kind of like this. And so that would be the computer vision 1.0 or software 1.0 way of attacking the problem. And as you can probably imagine, that's super tedious and very brittle. And so in the machine learning world, what you would do is you just show the computer a whole bunch of inputs and outputs, and you let it figure out how to map those together. And so by looking at millions of different like virtual flashcards, if you will, it'll over time just learn how to map the inputs with outputs and solve the problems and essentially write the software steps itself.
When you think about a bunch of inputs, what's the average number that we talk about?
This is actually changing really rapidly. In the, let's say, early days of computer vision, say 2015, 2016, you might have needed hundreds of thousands or millions of images to solve a problem. And there's been really rapid advances where now some of our customers need dozens or hundreds of images to actually solve their problem if they're particularly constrained to a narrow solution. And there's actually a new field of computer vision called zero-shot computer vision, where you actually don't need any of the answers. Folks like Meta AI and OpenAI have built these large models that have accumulated general knowledge from essentially scraping all of the content on the internet. And so they already know about things like cats and dogs. And so you don't have to show it those things. You just basically use it out of the box without without doing any training.
I think of Midjourney, DALL-E from OpenAI, like these visual AI generative platforms is augmenting or supplementing your needs with that, the way that they're reducing the amount of images they need to feed into any model?
Yeah, but not so much in a one-to-one sort of sense, but in the same way that you don't have to teach Midjourney or DALL-E what a cat is to draw that thing. The same models are actually used behind the scenes to actually be able to identify those things. And so a lot of the models that we are seeing on zero-shot computer vision are actually used in the training process of stuff like DALL-E and Midjourney. And in fact, one of our models that we use extensively called Clip was developed as a part of DALL-E.
Man, perpetual learning is part of my intrinsic motivation. I hope you're enjoying this. Yes, we did just jump right into the deep end, but what a gift, right? Brad, thanks again for being here, pal. Like, what you mentioned zero shot what?
I mean, zero shot is kind of the general term.
So that's a term, yeah. Any other terms that you've kind of been seeing emerge within the field?
Yeah. One of the things that is probably not on most people's radar yet, but that we're super excited about is multimodality. And so that means combining different types of data together. So we just talked about DALL-E or Midjourney. And those are a type of multimodal model where it takes as input text and it outputs images. There's a whole bunch of other models coming down the pipeline that deal with text and imagery together. So you might be able to feed it a picture and ask it a question, or you might be able to just ask it to count things in the picture, or inquire about other things that you might do with the picture. So combining things like GPT-4 with things like Midjourney and being able to have these mashups, and then the forefront of that is also combining that with audio data or geospatial data or infrared data, or essentially anything you can get from a sensor, and having a single model that deals with all of that stuff together.
Wow. So multimodality describes different types of art or different types of multimedia content interacting not as one, but collaboratively.
Yeah, and the way that I would kind of think about this is we've seen these emergent behaviors of these large language models where you just feed them the internet and they do things that you didn't really expect. So one of those things is translation. The internet has all sorts of text in different languages, and nobody trained these models to translate between them specifically, but it just kind of learned the associations between languages, and now they can speak multiple languages. And so previously you would have a single language model, and now you have a multi-language model, and that makes it much more powerful because it can just consume that much more data. So imagine now you're training GPT-4 not just on all the text on the internet, but every YouTube video in existence, and every image on Google Images, and every audio clip from Apple Podcasts. It just gives it that much more data to learn from, and it makes it that much smarter.
Knowing that there's a funny phrase floating around like AI won't take over the world, people who use AI might. How do we stay ahead? How do we remain, in charge is the wrong word, right? But how do we continue to lead with the support of these emerging technologies?
I think this is probably going to be the most fun question of the next decade, because the answer is we don't really know yet. And I think it's really interesting to look backwards in time at similar inflection points and see how those societies dealt with things. So one thing that I like to go back to is the invention of the spreadsheet. And you can imagine that if you looked at a room of accountants that were by hand tabulating things, and this was like 30 people that had, well-paying desk jobs, and you told somebody that a computer was going to do that instantaneously in, a matter of years, they'd be super worried about all of the unemployment that the spreadsheet would bring. But in reality, the number of jobs that were replaced by that was just completely dwarfed by all of the new industries that were created. So imagine all of these, day traders that are using spreadsheets to create financial models, and the management consulting industry, and basically all the use cases of spreadsheets. And it's been so accretive for the economy and for productivity that we don't even notice all the human tabulators that we replaced. And those folks, were able to find other jobs doing more useful things now that computers are able to automate things. And so I think machine learning is going to be the same way, where yes, probably, eventually self-driving cars will take over for taxi drivers, but that frees up human labor to do other things that we don't yet know how to do with computers. And also is going to be a multiplier effect on everybody's output. So me personally, I feel like I'm a pretty good programmer, but when I use a tool like GitHub Copilot, it actually makes me much more productive. And so you multiply that times every other job in the world, and if everybody gets 2 times more productive, we get 2 times more output, and we're collectively that much better off.
You mentioned you're a pretty good programmer. I would at least give you a little bit more credit. I think of you as a remarkable programmer who's been able to create some very interesting things over the years. For some of our students or entrepreneurs that might be interested in coding, what's the advice that you might share for someone curious about that path?
I think coding is just another means of expression. And so just like I don't consider myself a writer, but I write. I don't actually really consider myself a coder, but I code. The way that I always introduce myself to people is, hi, I'm Brad, and I like building things. And coding is just the way that I can manifest those sort of ideas into something tangible. And so the advice that I would give anybody who's interested in learning how to code is just come up with an idea and start building. You don't have to go research a bunch of stuff ahead of time. If you dive in and start building, as soon as you run into a roadblock, you can learn the thing that you need to solve that problem. And by doing that, you're specifically focusing your efforts on exactly the most useful things for you to learn, because you're hitting a roadblock, and so you need that thing at that particular time. So I would just start building.
Thinking about that first move of building, is there a programming language that you might suggest someone tinker with first?
I don't think it really matters that much. I'm probably a really bad one to ask because when I was getting started, I learned in PHP, and nobody uses PHP anymore, I guess, except for Facebook and Wikipedia. But that's mostly through
I remember the days of Web
quirks.
2 being built on PHP, HTML. I think of Python if you're interested in some of these emerging AI technologies. It seems like that's one of the programming platforms that's being discussed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and different languages are best for different purposes. So I guess,
sure,
depending on what you decide you want to build, you choose a different tool for that job.
So getting back to kind of the origin stories of RoboFlow, I feel like it began with the advice you just shared. I remember you tinkering with the augmented reality stuff, make my face into a gorilla. You were playing, Magic Sudoku. What a story there. I mean, these are examples of you doing that activity. And in doing so, share the story. I mean, the chess game out being seen, and all of a sudden you realize that I'm not going to steal this story, my friend. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my first company was called Hatchlings. We made social games. I started it when I was a student up at Iowa State, ended up dropping out and essentially running a Facebook gaming company for a decade.
And that's still rocking and rolling.
Yeah, actually they've got a office a couple blocks from here. I think there's like 8 people still working on that and building both Facebook games, but also mobile and Roblox games now. So that's been awesome. That's been 15 years since I started that, and I'm no longer really involved in any capacity in that, but it's awesome to see kind of my creation having new leadership and living on its own. But about a decade into that, I felt like I was kind of like in this rut where I'd learned most of what I needed to learn. It was definitely a great experience learning how to start a company and hire people. Definitely on the engineering side, servicing tens of millions of users was something that I had never been prepared for throughout my schooling career or my early days of putting stuff out on the internet. But after doing that for a decade, I was looking for what was the next thing that I was going to learn, and I'm a naturally curious person, so I was kind of experimenting with whole bunch of new technologies. And Apple came out with their augmented reality kit. So I thought, oh, I could probably build something cool with this, and thought about ideas to build, and had this idea for how do we inspire people to build really cool AR experiences? Like, everybody was just putting Pokemon on a table. There's no real reason for that to be in AR. Like, it kind of looks cool, but it's a gimmick. But the real promise of augmented reality is a world in which everything is smart. So in the olden days, you would put a microchip into something to make that thing a computer itself. In the future, you will add intelligence to real-world objects with software just through, AR glasses probably. And so started thinking about, like, is there something that I can do to demonstrate that, we could create this Minority Report style world where, like, you look at something and it has a software property on top of it just by virtue of having AR interacting with it. And the first idea that came to mind was Sudoku puzzles. I figured, in high school, I learned how to solve a Sudoku with programming. And I knew that I could do the mobile apps and the augmented reality stuff. And there was an interesting challenge of, okay, how do I connect the dots of this real world item with the algorithm I want to run and then the AR that I wanted to apply? And so I called up a high school friend who was teaching data science. And spoiler alert, this is now my co-founder. And I said, Joseph, I've got this idea. I've got like 70% of it figured out, but I'm pretty sure I need machine learning here, and I don't know how to do that. Could you help me? Like, does this sound even possible? And he goes, dude, you're nuts. Like, the machine learning part of this is the hello world of machine learning. I could do that in a couple of days. Like, that sounds like the easy part. The augmented reality part sounds really hard, and I don't know how to do mobile apps. Like, I'm not sure I even believe that you can do that. And so what I figured was, if between the two of us, we thought the whole thing was easy and it was just different parts of it that we thought were hard, we would make a perfect team. So we teamed up and built that and launched it, got a ton of attention, and won Product Hunt AR App of the Year, and then kind of shelved it for a little bit.
And that was about 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
That must have been like 5 years ago now.
Okay. Yep.
I think it was like 2017.
Okay.
And then we both went back to our day jobs. I was running Hatchlings, and he was teaching and running his own machine learning consultancy and running a startup. And we kind of forgot about it for a couple of years. And then we, met back up and we were like, why did this not inspire a bunch of people to build really cool AR experiences? And so we got to brainstorming and we're like, well, maybe they need more inspiration. So we started building a whole bunch of these other apps, and we built a chess helper app, and we built a boggle solver app. And
my friends, I play poker with Brad. I'm always worried about this guy having that poker version of what we're talking about. It's an unfair advantage. Continue.
Yeah, and I still think somebody should build the blackjack card counting AR app.
Just throw it in some contact lenses, and we're off to the races.
Yep.
Oh, I got a notification. Hold on. I'll double up.
Yep, exactly. And it turned out that, we didn't inspire. It wasn't that we didn't inspire anybody, but nobody kind of followed in our footsteps. And so we started asking ourselves why that was, and asking a bunch of our users and our friends why that was. And it turns out that the hard part of what we did wasn't actually the computer vision or the augmented reality or the mobile app. It was actually all the back-end tools that we had to create in order to create that app. And so, we had built data collection tools and organization tools and augmentation tools and model training stuff just out of necessity because it didn't exist. And so we ended up pivoting the company from building AR apps to building developer tools. And then we're kind of off to the races. That was 3 years ago. And now we've got 250,000 developers that have built something with RoboFlow. Over 2/3 of the Fortune 100 have used RoboFlow for something. And we're working on commercializing it.
The growth that we've all enjoyed watching around RoboFlow is a remarkable story. And we're going to talk about that right after this. So I just got this shirt in the mail. It's the icon, the logo, the NFT, the representation for You Don't Need This podcast. And it just came out so cool, I thought, maybe I'll make one for you. Huh? It looks sweet under a hoodie. I was trying to think, all right, so I'd buy a t-shirt, sure. But what if there was a digital asset? That thing is a phygital item. It comes with an NFT if we want. Boom. Down the fairway, eh? Check them out. Enjoy. I hope you are sweating with ideas. This has been a wild roller coaster already. In this next section, we're going to keep it tight, but there is lots to talk about. Brad Dwyer is in studio. We're going to talk about going through Y Combinator, right? You heard about this ideation and how it emerged into helping developers with computer vision and machine learning. How do you work through one of the most interesting accelerators? How do you raise $20 million as an Iowa startup? Partnering with global brands. BenBot's got a little contribution, and let's make sure we sneak in some conversation around the state of the art and what's next in computer vision, maybe a little sprinkling of how community plays a role in that entrepreneurial lifestyle as well. Brad, thanks again for joining us. This has been fantastic. If you're enjoying it, hit that subscribe button, my friends. This is a weekly conversation, and we're so thankful that you've decided to join us. All right, so rewind, the ideas coming together. You and Joseph are now realizing that developers need support. How does YC come into the equation?
Yeah, I mean, YC was a little bit further down the line. The first thing that happened was I was kind of consumed with this augmented reality and machine learning stuff, and my teammates at Hatchlings kind of had an intervention. They pulled me into a room one day and they said, okay, Brad, listen. We know you're really passionate about this machine learning stuff and augmented reality, but we kind of signed up for the game thing. So maybe it's best if we go our separate ways, and we can handle the games. You go do the AR stuff. And I think they expected me to be upset or like angry, or I'm not entirely sure what, but I was so relieved. Like I had felt like I was trapped in this thing and that people were, depending on me to really like keep it going. But my heart wasn't really in it anymore. I kind of felt like I'd learned what I needed to learn. And, I never intended to start a social gaming company. It just kind of happened. I had a million users one day and it was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this thing. And so we put a new CEO into place at Hatchlings, and I left and kind of went on a bit of a journey, took a bunch of machine learning courses and spent some time in Asia just hacking solo at some co-working spaces in Bali and just learning as much as I could and diving in as deep as I could, and came out of that with, I think, a dozen ideas of what I could build next. And one thing that I knew was I didn't want to be a solo co-founder again. I wanted to find somebody that complemented my skill set, and so I started searching through my network and folks that I had in the back of my mind of people that I would love to work with someday. And one of those people was a high school friend. But not the one that you're thinking of after that last story. It was actually Joseph's older brother, who, we had hacked on robots and programming and stuff in high school.
What high school is this? I want to go there.
Yeah, this was at Dowling. Both of them went to Central also. And I started trying to recruit him. Unfortunately, he's also a lawyer that codes. And it was very hard to try and convince him to, get pride away from that big company lifestyle. But what happened was I went out to visit him in D.C. and had dinner with his brother, who I had known from high school, but he was a bit younger than me, so we'd never really been that close. And we got to talking, and it then was kind of clicked that, oh, I guess Joseph was the one that I called about the machine learning stuff. Like, Joseph has a ton of interests in common with me. Joseph had just sold his last startup and was kind of looking for his next thing. And we decided to team up and, do that AR board game thing. And then we pivoted to the dev tools thing. And we actually applied to YC with the AR board game idea and got rejected. And then pivoted to dev tools and showed a lot of progress, applied again, and then got in summer 2020. And then it was kind of off to the races.
How do you raise $20 million?
This is not going to be a particularly fulfilling answer for the audience, but YC was just instrumental for us, especially as an Iowa startup. I think everybody just assumed that we were a Silicon Valley company, and it got us connected with the Silicon Valley investor network. And we had, for our seed round, multiple term sheets, and we're very fortunate to be able to pick the partner that we wanted to work with, and raised a $3 million seed round. And then, I think it was a year or so later that we raised our Series A from that same lead investor.
When you get that type of fuel into a rocket ship, as CTO, how do you lead a team of really smart people and a lot of remote activity? Like, boy, what a position. You just mentioned not wanting to be a sole co-founder. Now you're working with how many people are on the team these days?
There's about 30 of us now.
One of the things that's caught my attention is the way that you've leaned into remote and celebrating that, but still bringing the team together IRL. Thoughts on leadership in this work?
I mean, I guess to answer your first question of how do you raise $20 million and then what do you do next? I think the most key thing is to realize that is the starting line, not the finish line, and not to think that raising money is the end of things and that you've made it. Really, that's just a ticket to enter the race, essentially. And so we were very intentional about our growth and made sure not to overhire. And so because of that, we've been very fortunate not to have to do layoffs or change the plan. And I think one of our strengths is that we're very intellectually honest with ourselves of the things that are working in the company and also the things that are not working in the company, and making sure to spend our time working on the most important things and not just kind of fooling ourselves into thinking that we've already made it. And I think the second question was about remote work. That's actually something that we are continually trying to iterate on and make sure that we get all the benefits of being remote and that global talent network, while also not having all the negatives of remote, where you have a team that doesn't see each other day to day, and communication can be tougher, and
lose out on some of the serendipity of being in person.
The sort of excitement and just that feeling of all being in it together, and it's you against the world type of thing, where when you're not in the same room together, that can get lost sometimes. And so one of the things that we do is we get together in person, and that's kind of a hack of a remote company. You would think that the in-person element might be less important, but it's actually way more important. So twice a year, the whole company gets together. The alternating quarters, each team gets together with their team, and then we have a travel budget where each member of the team gets a pretty large amount of money that they can use to travel anywhere that they want to, but the only rule is they have to go there to work with another team member. So sometimes they'll go visit someplace where somebody else lives. Sometimes a bunch of people rent an Airbnb and go work together and hack for a week. But that stuff has been really important for culture and for building the team.
You see the culture in RoboFlow at events. People know each other. People are friends. They're excited to be together. I love the way that you've almost transitioned what might have been used as a large lease payment in the past and use some of that budget to create the serendipity of IRL interactions while benefiting from the talent pool and efficiency of remote work. So kudos to that. And I think if you're listening, that's something to consider. If you are a remote team, still connect in person to continue building. Thinking about the team and knowing we have listeners, where are you looking for next? Who do you need to add to the RoboFlow journey?
There's a few different areas that we're hiring for right now. The one that I'm most involved in is on the engineering and product side. So definitely we need more machine learning engineers, full stack engineers, that kind of thing. We're thinking about whether product is its own separate function from engineering. Right now, all of our product management is done by engineers directly, but we've been doing an experiment with our new self-serve plan where that's been spearheaded by somebody that is not technical by their nature. They're more operationally and financial and business background, and that's actually been working really well. And so we're thinking about whether that's a role that we should add to the product and engineering org versus kind of having people continue to wear multiple hats there. And then definitely on the go-to-market side, one thing that's been working really well for us is we have a role called field engineer, which these are highly technical software engineers that are not spending the majority of their time working on the product itself. They're actually embedding themselves in our enterprise companies and being their computer vision expert and helping make sure that, okay, yeah, you have this software, but do you have the right training and capability to actually drive the business outcomes that you want. And so, when a large company like Walmart buys software, they don't really care about the software. They care about the business outcomes. So we want to make sure that we can embed people there and make sure that the outcomes are what we want, not just that the software is what we promised. And then also on the sales side, I think one of the unique things about us is that we hire technical people all across the board. And we have engineers that are working on our marketing team, on our sales team, on our field engineering team, on our product team, obviously. And that's just such a superpower, especially when our customers are largely developers.
If you're a nerd looking for something fresh, it sounds like there's plenty of ways to plug into RoboFlow. That's fantastic. And I also like the extension beyond just an account executive. These are individuals that are weaving, like you said, themselves into that culture, looking for what outcomes they seek, but also getting creative and surprising them, I'm sure, once in a while. It's creating loyalty versus like, sweet, we have this crazy platform. We've heard it can do awesome things, but where do I start? Or you're limited to one person who's probably already doing other things. So nice work on weaving into client experience. That's fantastic. Man, Brad and I were talking about, we need like a different category of this show that's like 2 hours. I feel like this conversation, as so many of our do deserve. But knowing we're coming up towards our time here, I had to ask BenBot something. And so the question for BenBot this time is, what are the 5 craziest examples of computer vision you've seen worldwide? And then we'll have Brad reply and maybe shift gears to close things down about kind of the future of some of these things. I also asked BenBot, what are the 5 most simple examples? So the 5 crazy ones were facial recognition, autonomous vehicles, object detection, AR or augmented reality, and gesture recognition, which to me aren't that crazy. I don't think those are going to surprise you. I'm sure you actually have more interesting additions. The most simple examples that were thrown out here is image classification, image segmentation, optical character recognition, face detection, again, so it's awesome. And then motion detection. So a little repetitive there on the last ones, BenBot. But thank you for contributing. Love having a little conversational AI woven into that. When I list those things off, what comes to mind?
Let me one up BenBot on the craziest computer vision
Please
stuff.
do.
So we actually have one user that might have the 3 craziest things that have been built with RoboFlow so far. This guy runs a YouTube channel called Dave's Armory, and it seems like he just likes building crazy robots, and he's found that RoboFlow is an excellent way to give those intelligence. And so 3 of the coolest things that he's built, and these are all on YouTube. We can maybe link to him in the show notes. He built a robotic laser cat toy where when he's at work, he has this robotic arm with a laser pointer on it, and it leads his cat around to get exercise while he's out.
It's the most fit cat in the world.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's so it's the future of cat toys, I'm sure. Although I'm sure that it costs thousands of dollars for all this hardware for the robotic arm. But yeah, he built that with RoboFlow to follow his cat around. And then he built a robotic armchair. So he has this remote control that he built into his kid's armchair, like a recliner lazy boy. And then he put a camera on his armchair that follows the kid around. So he controls the kid, remote control, drives around his yard with this thing. It has like tank tracks on it. And then he's just controlling the kid. And it's like a computer vision train where his armchair is following this kid around the yard. And they just, I guess, traipse around and have fun in these robot
Babysitting
armchairs.
2.0.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it looks kind of dangerous to me, but it's so cool.
What, a tank and childcare? Those 2 things normally. Yeah.
So the third thing that he built, I guess he really doesn't like weeds in his yard, and he built this robot that drives around his yard and looks for weeds in his grass, and when it finds one, it's got a flamethrower. And it shoots a flame at it.
I was thinking like herbicide or maybe a little squirt of weed killer, but no, we're getting way more aggressive.
Yeah, that's too tame. And now I think his yard has all these scorch marks.
Yeah,
on
I was going to say,
weeds, but I guess
you're going to need
a
planter robot as well.
But there's YouTube videos of the making of all 3 of those projects from this guy's YouTube channel. It's super cool to see all the stuff he comes up with.
This is why we had to have Brad join us for this caffeinated conversation. Brad, when you think about the future, you're on the frontier. You're seeing so much different use cases of computer vision, machine learning, maybe sprinkle in some AI as well. where's your mind at when you look forward?
I mean, it's definitely on some of that stuff that we talked about earlier of machine learning.
Multimodality was one of the things.
Right. And machine learning keeps getting more and more powerful. And so how do we make sure that we are staying on the forefront of that and helping our customers use the latest and greatest? And that's kind of our specialty, is being the computer vision experts and helping make sure that that makes its way into traditional industry. So most of our biggest customers are in the manufacturing space and the retail space, and we have railroad companies using RoboFlow. And those aren't generally the types of companies that you think of as being on the forefront of technology, but they are the ones that get the most benefit from things, because if you can improve the operational efficiency of Walmart by 1%, that is billions of dollars. And same thing with railroads, and same thing with auto manufacturers. And so making sure that this technology makes its way out into the real economy is kind of what we're focused on. And so, as new stuff comes out, we're the conduit by which that makes its way from research into production.
Knowing we met and created a friendship within the startup community, I'm wondering if you might be able to share a short narrative on the part, the value, the aspect that community plays in an entrepreneurial lifestyle, and then we'll close out, leaving listeners with maybe a couple of thoughts from you to keep them building.
I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are challenging you and teaching you new things all the time, and are kind of helping you amplify the most important parts of your persona and your interests. And, I think a lot of people know me from the Des Moines startup community, but I would say that's maybe not the primary community that I feel like I'm a part of. And, ever since I was in junior high, I've been hanging out online and kind of finding my tribe of people who were hacking on stuff and programming and building things. And, the YC community is largely the same thing. It's this online sort of distributed thing. And so I don't think community is necessarily about a place. It's just a group of people, and they might be located in one location, but they might be distributed as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think when I think about Des Moines, it's really like more about, it's great to have somebody in person to talk about maybe not my machine learning interests so much, but about building a company and building a team and that kind of thing. And so there's like these different axes of community where I feel like you have to know the strengths of different communities. And the machine learning side and the computer vision side, it's largely digital, or traveling to Silicon Valley to meet with that tribe in person. But on the company building side, that happens everywhere.
I like thinking about your usage of the word axes. I also would throw in wavelengths, like thinking about community not as a one, community, and also not an or thing. It's an and thing, right? So finding different types of communities that are on those different axes can allow you to plug in and find the nourishment that you need now, but also later. So thanks for sharing that, Brad. All right, so we're closing down, and I love to finish with your voice, right? So, Brad, thank you for joining us. Where can people connect with you? And then would you mind finishing with, I don't know, a key takeaway, a tweetable thought, a final word, call it whatever you want, but close us down strong.
You can find RoboFlow at roboflow.com and at RoboFlow on pretty much any social media channel. We got a ton of cool applications of computer vision that you can try out in your browser and follow the forefront of machine learning there. Me personally, Twitter is probably the best place. I'm just at Brad Dwyer on Twitter. Tweetable thought. I think, Ben, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and I think one of the unique differentiators about the United States, if you look over the past 100 years, is that we are largely one of the most optimistic cultures in the world. And I think we're a little bit at risk of losing that. I think we need to build a culture of people who are very optimistic about the future and very ambitious and working to build this like utopian society of the future. But there's a countervailing force, which is that, that's not what drives clicks, and that's not what gets people hyped up a lot of the times. And so being a force for positive change is like a mindset that we need to consciously pursue. And so I think, if everybody was more charitable in their interpretations of how people are interacting with the world, and maybe less tribal in like this person's on my team or not, and more listening to the nuance of what people have to say, I think the world would be a much better place. And I think that's something that the United States has historically been very strong at. We sent somebody to the moon. We built the world's biggest economy. I think in a lot of ways the world is the best it's ever been, and there's certainly problems to solve, but focusing on how we can make things better versus how we dwell on the things that are wrong is kind of the mentality that I would love for more people to pursue.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of You Don't Need This podcast. We hope you enjoyed this weekly dose of innovative energy. Thanks to all who make this show possible. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'd love to learn more about what you're building. Hit me up over at benmcdougal.com, and until next time, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Keep building.